just a minute ago we had a toddler here playing the wheels on the bus go round and round, and here we go. This is the perfect soundtrack. Isn't this great to be talking about the testimony of Enoch? People already think it's crazy. Especially people who have not seriously considered the matter, or the consequences of how to handle eyewitness testimony. It's great. Enoch said this regarding what took place at Mount Hermon in the Golan Heights, right there where Israel is presently, even buttressing their fortresses with, or their forces with artillery. Yesterday, the Navy said that IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, says that if Hezbollah wants to continue this, it'll be the last war they fight. So this, of course, a response to a missile landing near the Dimona nuclear reactor that was launched from Syria, marking a sharp escalation in Syrian aggressive posturing in the Middle East. So many of you that are aware of this testimony, my testimony and personal witness regarding Syria and Israel, know that it's approaching a quarter of a century now, and that beginning 4 years before Assad took office, established by multiple witnesses. A couple of them I'll give you right off the gate. The Kostew family in Valdosta, Georgia, they have testified that it began for them, the first time they heard me warn of Assad's rise to power and subsequent destruction of his own people. They would testify that that occurred in 1997. He took office in 2000. So another family would be Ronnie and Katrina Sadler, youth pastors at the Jasper Church of God in North Florida. And if I worked at it, I could probably gather up about 40 more first-hand eyewitnesses that would testify that prior to these events coming to pass, the Father showed me that they would be, in fact, happening. And it is a very serious matter to steal someone's testimony by placing a question mark where they have placed an exclamation point. It's a serious matter to do it to Enoch. It is a serious matter to do it to me. It almost defines the lion's share of my life since I saw those events come spiritually and saw that they would come to pass. Because from that point forward, many people have laughed and scoffed, and then they would say things like, yeah, well, we'll see. No, I'm telling you, I saw 4 years before it came to pass. So for you to respond, we'll see, to me saying I saw before it happened and other people corroborating that testimony, that's cutting you off from a tether. That is, you're off in left field. You're not adhering to chronology and the proper sequence of events. So it's a dangerous place to be. Enoch talks about the rebellion of the watchers, which we're going to find out when we get into the testimony found in Slavonic Enoch, or Second Enoch. Enoch says this: when the sons of men had multiplied in those days, beautiful and comely daughters were born to them. Check. There are in fact beautiful daughters. And the watchers, the sons of heaven, saw them and desired them. And they said to one another, come, let us choose for ourselves wives from the daughters of men, and let us beget children for ourselves. And their leader, named Semyaza, the leader of the watchers, he was the leader of a band of, at the time, 200 that had rebelled. Their chief said to them, I fear that you will not want to do this deed, and I alone shall be guilty of great sin. So he hatches this idea, and then he gets a mob to carry it out with him. And they take an oath and vow to do the thing, and the thing that they did, the Father said, of course, is abominable, and issued a very harsh sentence to them for doing so. And they all answered him and said, let us all swear an oath and let us bind one another with a curse, that none of us should turn back from this counsel that they took one with another, until we fulfill this deed and do this deed. Then they all swore together and bound one another with a curse. And they were, all of them, 200, who descended in the days of Jared onto the peak of Mount Hermon, and they called the mountain Hermon because they swore and bound one another with a curse on it. Folks, it's a serious matter to take an oath, and it is a very serious matter to take an oath to rebel against something that the Father had ordained. And then it goes on to talk about their names. I said that to say this. If you were to turn off this video right now and go look on Fox News or CNN or whatever news installation you frequent, you're going to find presently tanks aligning just south of where this event took place. Just south of the event where the Messiah himself stood, his feet on a rock, Mount Hermon, at a place called the Gates of Hell. Today it's called that even. You can look it up on your favorite search engine or whatnot and just type Gates of Hell. And you will find that the Gates of Hell is a location at the base of Mount Hermon, placed squarely between Syria and Israel. And that is where this rebellion of these watchers, these fallen beings, took place, as it states, in the days of Jared, which is confirmed even in your canonical sources. I started the camera because something that happened after I stopped recording was just too good to leave out. And it was a question that Patrick had, and it's one that I had, which caused me to go into this journey looking at testimony outside of canonical sources, which nobody in the first century had, and nobody at the time of Moses had. And so it was the question, it's an existential question, really. And there isn't a better book to get you past the floodwaters than the testimony of Enoch. And I maintain that in the very near future, people will be swept away by their rejection of that, because that was in the testimony in the apostolic writings that people will be denying the flood even in the last days. Scoffers and mockers, following their own evil desires. And they'll say, where is this coming? For ever since our fathers passed away, everything goes on and it has since the beginning. They're scoffing and mocking. Nothing's going to change. And they, it says, deliberately forget. They cast off knowledge of the flood. And again, affirming what I said a minute ago, there is no better testimony to get you through the floodwaters that are coming in the future than that of the testimony that preceded the floodwaters in the past. And those floodwaters, and that levee breaks when Golan is conquered by the Assyrian and the enemy comes from the north to the south like a flood. So Patrick had a question regarding the watchers, attested to in Genesis 6, attested to in Enoch's testimony in Enoch chapter 1, and it was basically, where did the event described of the watchers descending to Mount Hermon in the days of Jared fall with respect to the original sin in the beginning and the rebellion of Lucifer, or the adversary Satan, in the heavens? And at that point, it dawned on me, that's kind of why I started, one of the reasons why I started looking into this stuff to begin with. And we have two options, really. We have the one option, there is no way to know and we can't know, so let's just keep our head to the ground. Or there is testimony from that, of that event, and we have rejected that testimony, and the answer is the latter and not the former. And so when we look in the fifth heavens, which we will do in detail here in the next section, the fifth heavens is the realm of the fallen watchers, the fallen host of heaven, the Grigori, and their chief prince, Satan, called Satan and his messengers in the book of Revelation, called the host of heaven in Jeremiah chapter 8, other gods in the testimony of Moses, thou shalt have no other gods before me, and of course in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, the testimony of the Apostle Paul regarding Satan giving power to the son of perdition, the son of destruction, and all manner of lying signs and wonders, of course, mentioned in Revelation. And the testimony that we do have is found largely in Slavonic Enoch or Second Enoch. So if you want to know, look at it. And if you don't want to know, and you want to continue to be a simpleton and a brute, continue to avert your eyes from it and then just pretend like there aren't answers. I'm telling you today, there are answers, and they are worth looking at. And that's why that's really the thrust of what we're doing this weekend. So when we get to Enoch's testimony of the fifth heavens, and it is nothing short of astonishing, pay attention to your spirit, because it might be troubled. And do know that the Father above did not give you a spirit of fear, but one of power, love, and a discerning mind. Ask yourselves what the ramifications of beings from above descending upon the earth, like a flood, would have on the overwhelming majority of your loved ones. Because that is what is going to happen. And you can either cower and hide from that fact because it's uncomfortable today, but in doing so you are complicit. You are complicit in the deception that might come upon them had you spoken in courage instead of cowering behind a book or a collection of books, or pastor says, or rabbi says, or my cleric says that I shouldn't be looking at those things. That's what's before you today, and the stakes couldn't be higher.